Did you know that breast milk is one of the most complex and unique foods in nature? It's gonna be kind of great. So let's just start out with just the overall benefits of breast milk. Number one, we all know about this. It's really a great optimal nutritional food. It really is, and I'll get into some details shortly. But also there's immune function that has to deal with. There's also gut and brain development. And last but not least, but actually there's a reduction in disease. Did you know that a woman that breastfeeds and breastfeeds for a significant time, there's actually a reduction in risk of breast and ovarian cancer? Let's look at the nutritional value. Nutritional value, there's fats, there's proteins, there's carbohydrates, there's vitamins, there's minerals. That's a great thing, and it's so much easier for digest. And compared to like cow's milk or formulas, it's a very digestible food. So not only does it have great nutrition, it's very digestible and very easy on the digestive tract. And it's really important to know that because your GI has not fully developed yet. So you need these things to be pre-digested and available for the child to pass through very good. Immune function, that's one thing that I think is so important. It contains antibodies, especially secretory IgA. Now, do you have to know that? No, that's my job. But I want you to, if you do look it up, it's actually a blanket of immune protection for the baby, which is so cool because what it does, it also coats the infant's GI and leads to protect against infections. Man, that's why I said it's one of the coolest foods in nature. Also what it does, it also has immune cells like macrophages and lymphocytes and antibacterial factors. Once again, like, lactoferrin I think is one of them, and also lysozymes. Now, once again, what are those things for you guys that are listening? They're just, once again, immune factors that protect the baby against infection, but also help the baby have better immune function. Next, gut and brain development. That's important. See, there's sugars in there called oligosaccharides. Just think really long sugars. What it does, these are specific probiotics and prebiotics for the child, which is great because the bacteria that we need to develop, they actually eat it and then they grow through the process. And this prevents pathogens, from starting. Once again, so it's another layer of protection. Next thing is it's rich in a lot of good long fatty acids, which is fantastic because DHA, which is so important for the brain. So important for the brain. But another factor that I want you guys to know, it reduces the risk of disease. Let me explain how. Well, once again, when the baby is breastfed, what it does, it lowers the risk of ear infections, diarrhea, respiratory infections, allergies, asthma, also obesity, and also type 2 diabetes later in life. They've actually studied this. But the one thing that I think is really cool is that when moms breastfeed, what it does, it actually helps them lower the risk of breast and ovarian cancer. That's pretty amazing if you think of it this way. That's something that your body produces in nature for the best food for the child. It reduces the mother's risks. Now that you know some of the great benefits of breast milk, one of the questions I get all the time is, all right, what do we do as far as how long? And I know this has been implanted in people to say, listen, after 6 months, you should definitely involve foods. Well, I have some concerns about that. Because here's why. If we look at the development of the immune response, look at development of the GI tract, yes, there's no doubt from birth to 6 months, it's very important to just give the child breast milk. Because why? There's certain things that do not exist and they're slowly developing over the course of 6 months that we need. There's certain enzymes that are present at birth. There's enzymes that are not fully developed. And top of it, concern if you put food in too early. And there are studies that show that if you put food in too early, it can lead to health problems, including allergies. Even if you give them extremely good, organic, non-processed food, that can still lead to that. So that's why I tell people it's like this. First 6 months, you want to be very strict. The next 6 months, what we notice is now more activity in certain organs for digestion happens. The pancreas, the activity increases and allows you to actually improve the digestion. That's why if you look at what happens after 12 months, now the enzyme system for both carbohydrates, proteins, and actually fats is more complex and it's better at digesting those. That's why I've always gave the advice to people, say, listen, to allow the child's immune system, GI system and everything to develop, to be able to digest those foods properly and get the best benefit out of it that way, it's good to look around that year mark. And here's why, is because once again, all these things start to progress and they start to get better. The microbiome, which you've all heard about, continues to develop into that year stage that way to where it's really set up well for digestion. And most children at that time can still handle now a wide variety of foods after that year mark. One of the coolest things I think when it comes to breast milk, breastfeeding, the health of the mom, the health of the child, is the composition of breast milk and what happens to the breast milk over the course of time. You know, when a baby is born and the mother starts breastfeeding, what happens is the vast majority of it, they roughly say anywhere from 60 to 70% is actually water. And then about roughly 7 to 10% is carbohydrates, about 3 to 5 to 10% is actually fats, and only 1% is protein. So that's why when you look at the food makeup of breast milk, it's very different than most things they're going to do. And it's actually very different than the formulas. It's very different than cow's milk, it's very different than goat's milk. And yes, I understand that there can be some situations where women cannot breastfeed. And I'm totally empathetic to that. I see it, I've seen it in clinical practice, and there has to be some compensation with actually having people have some form of formula. Just try to get as close to breast milk as possible. But once again, the vitamin and mineral content in there is fantastic. The bioactive, basically problems that exist when you deplete those things you don't have in breast milk, it actually just sets the child up for things later in life. But here's the cool thing about it. The breast milk does change over the course as the baby's needs come along. For example, I've always found this so fascinating about the female body. The nipples actually are a sensory organ that when the baby latches on, there are certain enzymes and certain hormones that actually come from the child's mouth that actually attach to the breast itself and actually give the mother clues what it needs at that time. So I think that is very fascinating. So when we look at all these things, what can we do actually to help the mom even produce a little bit more breast milk? Well, you think of it this way, hydration is always number one. With being massive amounts of water, you have to stay hydrated. And that's why when women say, oh my goodness, it seems like I can't eat enough in this. Yes, because your body is going to grab that other thing, the carbohydrates, aka, and also the fat. And that's why when women start breastfeeding, they actually start to lose some of the fat that they get gained. But that was actually a very smart thing that the body do to help women gain weight, because then they have the carbohydrate and the fats to now get into the breast milk, and that's why a woman will actually lose weight while she's breastfeeding. But when it comes to breast milk production, it's really looking at those carbohydrates and fats. So once again, healthy oils, healthy carbohydrates that really feed that breast milk and actually have that production. Because a lot of times women just don't eat enough, it's gonna sound funny, sugar during the time. Now, not highly processed sugar, we're talking about good healthy carbohydrates and stuff that come from things that we want to encourage you to eat, but also sometimes they lack with even the amount of fats they should be eating. But proteins are also very important for the mother to repair and recover from her pregnancy, but there's very little protein needed within breast milk until the child starts to get a little bit older and the breast milk demand actually changes as gets into the 6th, 7th, 8th month of life for the child. So understand that maybe the woman will need a little bit more sleep. If a woman's body goes into fight or flight, there is a change in the production of breast milk. Next, that means keep your stress down. It's really important. Now, are there certain herbs and things like that can help? Yeah, fenugreek is something that has been known and used for a long period of time to help stimulate breast milk production, which I've seen that work several times. Now, does it work with everybody? Absolutely not. You say, remember, there's parameters. If you're under a high stress and you're just taking fenugreek, it doesn't mean there's going to be a direct relationship to that way of producing. It's just something to support the body to produce these things. So always remember, everything that we do and everything I want people to understand is we need support to the body. We need to support the nutrition when the mother's body has certain demands. There's certain supportive herbs. There's certain supportive things that people can do. You gotta really keep those sleep factors, those stress factors, in play, and keep the stress under control and make sure you're getting enough sleep. Because all these contributing factors can either help you produce a lot of breast milk, or they can take away from your production. So I hope that was helpful. Why I think breastfeeding is so important for so many reasons, more than just nutrition, but as a child develops and as the needs come for the child and also for the mother, I think it's one of the greatest things that can be done.